So welcome back. Today we have our second part of the tutorial to make the boxy bag. Today's version will be made using a woven fabric, but we'll be using interfacing to create more structure to that woven bag. I'll also be using a zipper, a closed end zipper with a zipper pull already installed. We'll be trimming that to length and we'll be adding some straps. A lot of the techniques are, well, all of the techniques are completely transferable across the different bases. So you can install the zipper this way on a synthetic leather bag, or you could install the zipper the way we went through yesterday on this bag. Really just going through the different options so that you can try out different things. Okay, so now we're going to be cutting the same medium-sized bag, but in a woven fabric. I've got a tailoring twill that I'm using. It can be quilting cotton, canvas, pull, and any woven fabric. So again, just like the synthetic leather, I like to cut off my selvage just to make sure it doesn't get accidentally included in what I'm making. I also have my fabric folded in half, so there's 2 layers to be more efficient. So again, using my pattern measurements to mark out the size, using my pen. This one can be ironed off, so as soon as we iron on the interfacing, all of my markings will disappear, and by having the 2 layers, you know that they're going to be exactly the same. And again, you'll see that I like to mark first using the longer ruler and then cut using my shorter, thicker, sturdier ruler. It just makes sure that things are more accurate. I find the longer rulers can shift, and when you're needing such precise measurements, we obviously don't want that to happen. The reason I have 2 layers is because I'm going to be lining this bag. We're going to have one piece that's the exterior, and I'll be lining the bag with the same fabric. Now I'm going to grab my woven interfacing. This is going to get fused to both the lining piece and the main fabric piece. So I'll be needing to cut 2 of these the same dimensions as the main pieces. Again, to save time, I like to try and do things on the fold or double layers just to make things a bit more efficient. Now it's time to grab a fusible foam, fusible fleece, wadding, so many different types of interfacings that can be used here. This is just a bit of a fleece, which is fusible on one side. And I'll be cutting that to, again, the same dimensions of our other pieces. We only need 1 layer of this, which will get fused to the exterior main lining piece. So now I will be cutting my binding pieces, and I'll also be cutting my strap pieces. I'm going to include 2 straps on the one end, allowing them to be fastened with a snap so you can hang the bag easily. And then I'll also going to be adding a tab just to one end, but I'm going to use some webbing for this. So many different options. You choose what options you would like, whether you want straps on both sides, whether you want tabs on both sides, whether you want neither. Those options are completely up to you, and you just cut your pieces according to what you're wanting to include in your bag. You'll probably notice here that when I'm cutting smaller pieces that fit on the dimensions of my nice sturdy quilting ruler, that I don't actually mark first. Just with that smaller ruler, I feel like I can be accurate without needing to mark first and then cut. To make my straps nice and sturdy, I'll also be cutting pieces of the woven interfacing the same dimensions of the two strap pieces, but I won't be adding interfacing to the binding pieces. Now we have all of the pieces, my 2 pieces for the straps with their interfacing. I've got my 5 layers for the main construction and also my 2 binding pieces. The binding pieces need to be folded in half and then the ends folded into the centers and pressed. I'm now going to head off and iron on my pieces of interfacing. So here I have my exterior panel piece that's got its woven interfacing and then the fusible fleece. All infused to one side, and I'm going to add my markings again for the center and the size according to the pattern. And that's it. Now we have all the pieces we need and we can head across to the sewing machine. Okay, so here we are over at our machine with all our pieces that we went through before. Main piece with our fusible fleece interfacing already ironed on. Our lining piece woven interfacing. Our 2 strap pieces and our 2 binding pieces. Machine settings are actually, and the piece of webbing. So our machine is on very similar settings to synthetic leather. I've got my Teflon foot on there, tension around the same, around that 4 mark, straight stitch, slow speed. I find that those settings are pretty consistent once you're dealing with some layers. So first of all, we're going to make our straps. So folding that strap in half, closing off one of the short ends, flipping 90 degrees using our 1/4 inch seam allowance. You can choose to pin or clip if you like, or just take it nice and slow. Obviously fabric wrong side together here. At the short end, we're going to trim off the corner and half of the seam allowance. It just makes it easier to turn. Turning straps, I'm sure everybody has got different techniques. I still haven't found one that I use consistently. A pen, wooden spoon, bodkin, there's so many different options. Yeah, so you want to turn that strap the right way around. And corner, and then repeating the process on the other side, folding wrong sides together and sewing the short end and one of the short ends and the long end with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, once though you've got all the corners out nice and evenly, you want to take them over for a quick press, and then we're going to top stitch around the two long ends and the closed short end. Top stitch, I like to use a stitch length of 4. And just like with all top stitching, just take your time. So next you want to grab your main piece, and your webbing piece. So I'm just going to seal the end of that webbing so it doesn't fray. And on the right side of your main piece of fabric, we're going to attach that piece of webbing folded to the center mark. So we're going to be basting that on, and to the same end I'm going to be adding my 2 straps. So really accurate form of measurement here, called 2-finger distance. But you can measure an inch, you can, as long as they're the same either side. And they fall within the side markings as well. So I'm clipping all 3 of those in place. Then I'm going to baste them on. So now that our tab and straps are basted on, it's time to attach our zipper. So it's important that the zipper open end of the zipper should be at the end where your straps and your tab are. So I've trimmed off the excess zipper, and I'm just going to add a couple of stitches across the zipper just to make sure that I don't accidentally slide my zipper head off the tape. So same as the zipper we did yesterday, we will be placing that zipper face down and pinning like so. But before we do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach my lining piece. So I like to use a little bit of basting spray just to stop things from sliding. So just spraying a little bit of that on. Then align that lining piece. So we're sort of gluing the 2 wrong sides together. If that is secure enough for you, you can go ahead and install your zipper to the main piece. But I'm just going to baste around the edges just to stop things moving. Zippers can be a little tricky, so you want to make that as easy as possible. So now our main and our lining pieces are basted together. Now we're going to add that zipper. So just like I mentioned before, we're going to flip it over so that the teeth are facing down. We're aligning the raw edges of the zipper tape and the raw edges of the main piece with a little bit of overhang each side, making sure that the end with the zipper pull, the open end, is on the same side as your straps and tab. You can use double-sided tape like we did yesterday. Here I'm just using a couple of extra clips. Got that needle position far across to the left, meaning that we don't need to swap to a zipper foot. And taking things nice and slow, sewing on the zipper. Okay, now we're going to flip that over, give it a good finger press, and we're going to top stitch. So again, like the top stitching yesterday, having that slightly larger top stitch length means that you'll be able to enclose any of the raw edges neatly. And by having that little bit of the overhang of the zipper head at the top means that for this first step, you're not trying to dodge the zipper pull. So you'll see there on the underneath, by having that slightly wider top stitch, that it's quite neat underneath. Then we're going to fold the main panel, and we want the right sides together, lining up our raw edges at the top, and again pinning the zipper tape along that raw edge. Again, making sure your top and bottom are also aligned. And we're going to sew that zipper in place. So again, keeping this video real time for you here so you can see the speed in which we're attaching that zipper. So top stitching this side. This side is where it gets just that little bit tricky, and hopefully my hands are not in the way as I do this. So once you've finished sewing the zipper on, we need to open the zipper tape all the way, and this is why I added those few stitches at the start. We need to turn the bag right way out, and you want to start sewing from the end that has the far end of the zipper, so the bottom end of the zipper. So it can be a little bit fiddly to get it on the machine. As you can see, it's a little bit fiddly. Making sure you get the right seam allowance for that top stitch, just that slightly wider than 1/4 inch. And then sewing from the bottom of that zipper up to the top end. If you find when you check it afterwards that you do have a little bit of the raw edges, you can either showing on the lining, you can either trim them or you can add a second row of top stitching. I'm pretty happy with that. Then we need to flip the bag back inside out, so right sides together, and closing that lid, that zip a little bit of almost all the way but not completely. And this is where we follow on the same steps as the synthetic leather bag yesterday. We want to align the zipper with the marking of the center underneath. We're going to fold and pinch in the sides using our markings again, bringing that side marking into the center marking, pinning those raw edges together and making sure they're aligned. Beautiful. Now we're going to stitch that with a 1 centimeter seam allowance. You'll see that the foam makes this quite bulky. So you may find that you need to use the hump jumper or something to make that foot sit more flat when you start sewing. In this case, my machine was handling those layers quite fine. Taking it nice and slow, getting to that zipper, either dropping your speed all the way down or even hand cranking over that zipper section. Super slow, as you can see. Oh, and my thread snapped, so I was going too fast. So I'm just going to pin that, replace my thread, and that means I'll probably hand crank over the zipper for this time. Good thing is, because we're sewing from the inside of the bag, we can just go back over those stitches. It doesn't matter too much that that has happened. So I'm just going to start from the start, back stitching again, as I'm going to get to my zipper now, because I know that my machine is going to struggle a little bit more than I expected. We'll take it extra slow, and now I'm going to hand crank. Just to get me through the zipper section, and then also the seam where you've got your layers folded back. Now that I'm through that tough section, I'll go back and use my foot pedal. Very slow. Okay, now I'm going to trim off my zipper. Also a little bit of the foam here just to neaten it up. Stop the end of that zipper from fraying. Now I'm going to repeat the process on the other side. The other side can be a tiny little bit trickier because your zipper will be open. Make sure your zipper pull is inside the bag, down. You don't want to sew your zipper pull the wrong side of your seam. Been there, done that. But it does make it just a tiny little bit trickier when you are sewing over that zipper. So just a little improvising here. Couldn't seem to find my jumper that hump jumper that I normally use. So here's my roll of double-sided tape doing its job, making my foot nice and level so I'm not sewing uphill. And as I've learnt from the other end I will need to hand crank over the zipper here. As you can see, making sure that pull is on the inside of the bag. Trimming the zip and seam allowance if it's not quite the 1 centimeter you want to be working with, and sealing off the end of that zip. You can open your bag here a little bit just to make life easier later. And now we're going to be adding our binding. So you can, like I'm going to here, because as mentioned, binding is not my favorite thing to do. I'm adding a piece of double-sided tape just to keep things where they should be. Apologies for this not being in screen. That's it, folding in our sides, and then folding over the top part. We can do all of this in one move. The binding here really is just for a neater finish on the inside of the bag. A little bit different to when you're binding the neckline on a kinjaling, for example. Here we are just trying to seal off those raw edges. Pinning, clipping that all in place. So now with the binding, we've added even more layers. If someone wants to, they can count how many layers are going to be in the corner here. Once you add all of your interfacings, your fleece, all of those layers, you're well into double figures of layers of fabric here. So really do take it slow. You will need something underneath that foot to get you started. As I said, it really can be anything that's sturdy enough and helps that foot start off level. Super slow. If you move too fast here, you will break needles. And this middle section here, you will need to hand crank. Look, that's unless you've got a stronger or more heavy duty machine. I have an industrial machine that would get over this bulk with some ease. So I wouldn't need to hand crank in that situation. But if you are using a more standard sewing machine like this one, you will definitely need to hand crank through that middle section. I found my needle was getting a bit stuck towards the edge here, so did some hand cranking just even to backstitch. Beautiful, trimming off my threads, and then we'll be repeating that process on the other side. And so here we are. Now we just need to open that zipper, turning the bag right way round. And you'll see by using the foam, we've got a really nice shaped and structured bag. Very similar to if we'd used synthetic leather. You do have to work the corners a little bit to get them all to sit perfectly. Pull on the straps a little bit to get them to pop out of the corners. But we are done, other than adding a couple of snaps to those straps and trimming off any threads that you might have missed. I think I'm going to keep all my clips in this one. I'm going to add some snaps and hang it from my desk and keep my clips in it. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the sew-alongs. If you've got any questions, please ask them. We'll be doing a live question and answer tomorrow. I'll confirm the time that with you. If you've had any questions or if you've had any problems along the way, we can help try and troubleshoot. But I hope that you have enjoyed my sew-along, and I can't wait to see all the boxy bags that you've made. Happy sewing!